So we have social cognition today. Meta-representation. Remember this? Kids can meta-represent their own thoughts. This is an actual test, as I said, where Bobby has 4 dimes, Amy has 30 pennies. Which child has more money? This kid says Bobby. And then how do you know? Show your thinking. This is a genuine response. He's not trying to be a smart aleck. He's representing his own thoughts. And this is a meta-representation. It has a big fancy word, a little imposing, but it's something children do. And if this doesn't look imposing, then the word meta-representation should not. It refers to a cognitive property. It refers to a thought, it refers to somebody's emotions. Now, in terms of metacognition, a meta-knowledge, a meta-representation can refer to your own cognitive attributes or somebody else's. It's still a meta-representation because it refers to a cognitive attribute. It doesn't have to be yours. It can be somebody else's. We talked about how it can refer to one of your thoughts. So it can refer to your own cognitive attribute, like, I think that it's raining. Maybe you haven't looked outside. Maybe you heard some noise and you think, that sounds like rain. I think that it's raining. And you're representing your own cognitive attribute. How about you're sad that it's raining? I'm sad that it's raining. This is a thought representing your own thoughts. Now, a meta-representation, as I said, can be about your own thoughts. It can be about somebody else's thoughts. Now, you can think, I think John believes that it's raining. Still a meta-representation. You still got a chunk of meta-knowledge in your brain, in your working memory, that is representing a cognitive attribute. So, I think it's raining. John believes that it's raining. Mary thinks that John believes that it's raining. So you can start embedding meta-representations within each other to create this long chain of meta-representations. First order, second order, third order, fourth, fifth, sixth. Gets a little mind-boggling. But the point is the same. A chunk, those blue squares that I put up, instead of the green ones, it represents to an internal cognitive attribute. We talked about this. I showed you this before. A little absurdist, but the husband says, of course I care about how you imagined I thought you perceived I wanted you to feel. This is all meta-representation, and it's the idea of also mind reading, not psychic mind reading. You're inferring. You see somebody's eyebrows raised in the middle. You see watery eyes. You see a hangdog expression. You can think that they are sad. You're meta-representing their thoughts, their feelings. This is also referred to as theory of mind. Refers to the ability to represent what somebody else feels, thinks, or knows. This is a very unique human attribute in that some apes and other social animals can do a bit of this, but they can't do the advanced conceptual metacognitive mind reading, theory of mind that humans can. Even children under 4, as I talked about, their brains aren't developed enough. Your brain has to grow enough so that neurons can do high-level conceptual meta-representation. It's that really high-level top of the pyramid stuff. Humans have evolved this ability. People think for social reasons. Now there's an argument about this, but I'll get into that in a second, whether people, there's the argument as to whether people evolved a meta-representation because it's useful to represent your own thoughts, so you know how certain you are, so you can try to focus your mind, or whether it was evolved to understand other people's thinking, because that's beneficial too, and then was redirected towards ourselves. So there is a bit of an argument. But this is just the nature of mind reading. And this is the idea of also social metacognition, which is what we all do. These are more big words for things we all do all the time. Ever since you were a child, you're trying to guess how other people think and feel. You're trying to guess, what does the group think? What should I say to get the group's approval? What would make people laugh? What would be the right response? What tone of voice is socially appropriate? You are trying to guess how other people think and then act accordingly. Social metacognition is also about representing thoughts, emotions, intentions. This also allows us to coordinate our actions. If you don't know what somebody else's goal is, if you can't represent somebody else's intentions or values or beliefs, how exactly are you going to organize your behavior with them? Humans are a social animal. A human being in the forest by their own won't live long if they don't have the knowledge to do so. Humans evolved to organize and socialize, and this is one of the reasons why humans feel pangs of loneliness, because in our evolutionary conditions, if you were alone in the forest, you were in danger. This was actually not a good thing. And so humans evolved to need other people's engagement and company, and we feel it acutely when they're not around. And so social metacognition helps us optimize our own lives and the sharing of resources and the acquiring of resources and the sharing of information. So this is something we all naturally do all the time. This is in our hardware. And our software can learn to do it better, but we're all gifted the ability to represent each other's thoughts and feelings and really try and want to know how other people feel about us. We want to communicate how we feel about other people. This is social metacognition. You may have noticed that some people are innately better at this. Some people are innately worse at this. You may have known somebody who was bad at representing people's thoughts and were socially unskilled when they were young and got better over time. But this is how our self-knowledge can develop, and we can become more skilled over time. And the evolution of self-knowledge in human beings is a hotly debated topic. And so the evolutionary origins of how we have this strange and wonderful ability to represent our own thoughts and the thoughts of others. How did this come about? Why? What is the causal mechanism that gave rise to this wonderful ability? And so there's two alternatives, and they can be contrasted and compared with the evidence we have. It's always hard to guess why certain things evolved. Sort of like, why did the leopard get its spots? These are called just so stories, where we can imagine why we have certain attributes, why animals have certain attributes, but we can't go back in time and actually find out. And it'd probably be really boring to watch how animals such as us got our traits. Some of them are very obvious. Why did we gain eyes? Well, to see and move through our environment. Why do we have ears? Why do we have legs? Well, these are pretty obvious questions. Why do humans have the ability to self-represent and represent the thoughts of others? That's a little more tricky. And so one of the available arguments is that this ability for self-knowledge is first-person based, in that self-knowledge is an adaptation designed for metacognitive monitoring and control. It was just a good idea to build animals who could monitor their own thinking, to guess how certain they were before they went and did something. You know, just as simple as jumping across something. Can you accurately judge your ability to jump across a ravine? That's pretty important. Animals that couldn't accurately guess their ability to do something potentially dangerous didn't live long. Animals that could guess their ability to do something potentially dangerous lived longer. This is one way in which possibly the ability to self-represent came about. Representing our own thoughts and feelings accurately, our own abilities, was very useful. Another example is thinking sort of in terms of our evolutionary origins. If somebody forgot their spear on a tree back in the hunter-gathering age, and then were walking around a forest and they didn't remember that they forgot something, they might run into some danger and be eaten pretty quickly. Somebody who had a meta-memory glimpse that, I'm forgetting something. I know I'm forgetting something. You ever have that? You leave your home and you're like, I'm forgetting something. What am I? I know I'm forgetting something. That's not always true, but people who are able to do that would double check if they're forgetting something. Might go get their spear or some other useful resource and have an adaptive benefit that way. So that's one argument. The second argument is more third-person based. This representing the thoughts of others, this being useful in that self-knowledge depends on the evolution of a mind-reading system. This evolved first, not our ability to meta-represent our own thoughts, but what evolved first was the ability to meta-represent the minds of others. Getting along in a group dynamic was very important. Stealing the food of somebody who was higher than you on the social hierarchy could be fatal. stealing the food or mating opportunities of somebody who was lower on the social hierarchy was very useful. This adaptation also is a framework that is supported by the evidence. Now, Carruthers believes it is the latter that is best supported. Social animals developed the ability to meta-represent other animals' thoughts. This was useful, and then we just turned that ability on ourselves. That ability for having cognitive processes that refer to thoughts, period, was useful, and that we were then able to then reappropriate for ourselves. Theory of mind in children, the ability to meta-represent in children. Now this doesn't develop, as I said, until their brain grows enough. Children's brains are very small for quite a long time. Between the ages of 4 and 5, they start to be able to meta-represent the thoughts of others. They start to think about other people's thoughts and feelings. Before this, they start to make attribution errors to themselves and others. What's an attribution error? Now you ask a kid who's 4 years old a question, and they might say they don't know. You know, how high is Mount Everest? And they say, I don't know. Now if you say, okay, that's 4,000 feet. Now how high is Mount Everest? They'd say, oh, 4,000 feet. And you say, okay, did you always know that? They'd say, yeah, I always knew that. They can't imagine there was a time that they didn't know. They can't meta-represent their own thoughts. This idea of false belief. They can't imagine or represent conceptually their own thoughts other than what they feel right now. And if they think that if they have a thought, everybody has that thought. And then if you take them to one of their friends and you ask their friends, how high is Mount Everest? The other kid will say, I don't know. The kid you just told that fact to will start mocking them. How do you not know? Everybody knows it's 4,000 feet. You must be dumb or something. They can't fathom that this is not something that everybody knows if they know it. So these are called attribution errors. There's something else called the Smarties box test, where you take a Smarties box, take out all the Smarties, very cruelly, and you put pencil crayons in them. And you show a kid the Smarties box and you say, what do you think's in here? And they go, Smarties. Then you show them what's in there. And they get a long face and they go, oh, pencil crayons. Now you ask them again, so if I show this box to Sally, what do you think she'll say? What do you think she'll say will in the box? Well, we'll know. Well, they can't see that there's pencil crayons in them. They'll say Smarties. But the kid will say, well, Sally will know that there's pencil crayons in them. And you ask them, well, how would they know that? You didn't know. They'll say, well, I know. Everybody knows. They can't imagine that somebody might not know what they know. So you see how disadvantageous it is to not be able to meta-represent the thoughts of others. You make really simple errors. And of course, children have problems socially when they're very young because they can't accurately represent the thoughts and feelings of others. Now, children who by 4 or 5 start to have this new important human ability, when they start to master the theory of mind, they can understand things better. If they hide, they know where they are, but they also know that other people don't know where they are. At a certain age, they sort of think that, well, if I know where I am, everybody must know where I am. But 4 or 5, they know that only they have this knowledge. Also, if they have a thought or emotion but don't express it, they understand that deliberately not communicating something to others hides that knowledge from them. So if you ask a kid, do you know what happened to the cookies? They'll have chocolate on their face and they'll go, no idea. They are trying to keep somebody else from having knowledge. Yes?
It's like, if you ask a really dumb kid a question, like a factual, like your example of Mount Everest. Like
Yeah.
If you ask like a 3-year-old, how tall is Mount Everest? Sometimes they answer, I don't know, sometimes they say like, it's bigger than my dad or something.
That's right. Yeah.
But like, same, like, fact, or, well, I mean, obviously bigger than dad's not wrong, but like, they'll say something.
They'll say things like that, yeah.
Like, deliberately. That's like,
Uh-huh.
it's not right.
Right, but they believe it though, don't they?
Yeah.
They don't think they're giving false
No, they
knowledge.
don't, but I also don't think they ever had a kind of idea of that in their head before that. So it's not even like a false truth. They're just saying whatever.
Exactly. So they literally don't have the hardware
Yeah.
to even know that they're not telling something true or saying something untrue. They can't meta-represent, which has to means that to meta-represent, they say that one of the important aspects of meta-representing is the ability to know a thought can be wrong. We implicitly think all our thoughts are right. This is one of those system one things. We implicitly trust that all our feelings are correct, don't we? If I feel something, it must be correct. If I think something, it's by default true. The ability to have a more human and more adaptable understanding is to know that my feelings aren't necessarily true, my thoughts aren't necessarily true, and this gives us higher ability and degrees of freedom we wouldn't otherwise have. Yeah, so parents know that at a certain age there's a qualitative shift in how children think, and they get crafty and they can start to lie a lot more because they understand that a concept isn't necessarily true. And the power of saying false things can be delicious in terms of making a box of cookies disappear. So this is a very classic test for children to see whether they can meta-represent or not. So you give them this sort of test and you say, hey, the girl on the right is Sally, the girl in the blue is Anne. And so Sally puts her ball in the basket. Sally goes away, but then Anne moves the ball when she's out of the room. Now when Sally comes back, where will she look for the ball? Now what are we going to say? Right, where she put it. Not 3-year-olds. They'll go, oh, in the box. I know where it is. Anne knows where it is. How could Sally not know where it is? She must be not very smart. They can't imagine that if they don't know something that somebody else doesn't know something, or if they know it that everyone else doesn't. So this is the false belief test. So a meta-representation helps us understand that our concepts are ours, not everyone else's. Again, these are concepts that refer to other concepts. That a concept can be false. There is a self-representing concept. That a concept can be only ours. There is a self-representing attribute that we can use false concepts to manipulate others, to get ourselves out of trouble. There is a concept that refers to another concept. So there's self-representing concepts, meta-representations that give us this, this ability to understand and manipulate, but also cooperate with others. So getting back to this, yep, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, other people learning, like.
Is there a stage for that?
Yeah, kids who are like 5 or 6 or something, they'll tell you things about themselves or things that they know about the world.
Oh yeah. Actually, good point. They do engage in pretend play. This is a very common thing where kids will engage with, will guess the intentions of others when they're playing. And someone will say, I'm a princess. Someone will say, I see what game we're playing. I'll be a king. Okay, this is my scepter, and they'll pick up a stick. And they'll know the stick's not a scepter, but they're engaging in this sort of false belief narrative, this imaginative play that helps prime and develop this ability.
More like, you know when a kid comes up to you and they're like, I'm 6. I'm 6 years old. Like,
Yeah.
really like other people knowing about themselves.
Yeah. So the thing about humans being social animals is we crave other people representing our thoughts with us, representing our feelings with us. They want us to know, we want people to know how we feel inside. And we want people to know good things about us. So a kid will, you say, how old are you, kid? 5? And they'll be indignant. 5? I'm 6. How dare you? Because they want you to think well of them. They want you to think that they're more mature, even though it's funny to us. We all want people to think good things about us. So was there a question there?
Well, like, how can you kid, this is red. And I'm like, do you want to play with me? Yes.
Yeah, sure. So humans naturally crave social metacognition, the sharing of thoughts with each other. It's just an instinctive need in all of us that never really goes away. Also, kids don't know when they're being rude. So meta-representing social etiquette is sort of a higher level system 2 process that we'll get to in a second. But thank you, that's something we'll talk about in a moment. So this is all about the knowledge level. Social metacognition is the knowledge level, where now we have knowledge that refers to cognitive attributes themselves. This gets very meta, but don't worry, it doesn't go all the way down. It's just a matter of one agent, one person, having representations that refer to cognitive properties, and then you have another agent with the ability to meta-represent cognitive properties, and they can then engage with each other as a result. They can send meta-representations back to each other. Of course, if we call it meta-representations, it sounds very abstruse, it sounds very highfalutin, but really this is just what I'm doing right now. It's what we all do every day. How do you feel? How are you? They're asking you to meta-represent. Of course, most of us don't. Amazing how we're all fine. But this is considered a social nicety. A being concerned or showing care is asking somebody to meta-represent how they are. How are you? Usually only good friends will answer with a genuine meta-representation. Usually it's a false meta-representation. I'm fine. Can I have my coffee now, please? So usually, and a lot of mental illness is caused by people not genuinely engaging in meta-representing enough, not sharing their genuine thoughts and feelings, people not engaging empathetically with somebody's genuine thoughts and feelings. So this ability for social metacognition goes to the heart of what humans are and what we need socially. Empathy. People to genuinely meta-represent our thoughts and feelings with us and know who we are and what our values and beliefs and to care. And by understanding this ability for meta-representation, just like any system, we can engage in it better. We can interact with it better. It's one of those universal principles of intelligence. So understanding the intentions of others can be used to cooperate or exploit. I hope this makes sense. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking of this, like, isn't this kind of like when you have two groups of people that you like both of them, but they're kind of in drama with each other?
Yep.
So you're telling them each, like, you support them, and
Right. So
right in the middle.
social engagement is usually just one big tangled nest of social metacognition. And what are people doing when they're arguing? They're meta-representing their thoughts at each other. I think this, I think that. Notice that social disharmony and a lot of emotional pain comes when this gets cut. When people have differing representations of what they think is true or important. Now, instead of arguing, social harmony can just be caused by people not agreeing, but at least empathetically sharing their meta-representations with each other. So this is how political, religious, ideological people can sit down together. And they don't have to agree, but they can genuinely meta-represent each other's thoughts and beliefs, empathetically express it to each other, or say, hey, these are some principles we agree on. Like Canada, we agree on certain principles of social harmony and tolerance and caring about diversity. And people can have different beliefs, and that's okay, and that's actually a good thing. Different cultures may not think that diversity is good, but having meta-representations that then direct our ability to engage with each other can make all the difference. Yeah, I see that.
You said something about like something niceness. What is it again?
Oh, social nicety?
Social nicety.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know the term.
Sure, which other cultures don't have. Like in China, instead of saying, how are you, they say, have you eaten? They're showing a concern for your welfare. I mean, if you walk up to a random person, if you're hiking, we go, how are you? Everyone's, fine. So maybe this is not the best social custom, but it's just a matter of expressing at least token empathy, a token desire for meta-representation. I have at least some gesture that I'm trying to meta-represent your thoughts and feelings with you. And so this is an implicit example of this innate human desire we have. In China, the have you eaten, they're showing concern for somebody's well-being. Well, eating's pretty important. Because if you have, good. I'm glad you've eaten. If you haven't, would you like to get a bowl of noodles together? So this is so there's different ways of engaging in beneficial shared metacognition. Don't worry about this. This is complicated. A lot of people in papers like to write complicated diagrams so we can go, oh, it seems very complex. Must be correct. Now, I'm sure this is entirely correct, but it's not necessarily that important for understanding metacognition, which is what we all share. Now, individual metacognition, as I said, is the monitoring and controlling of our own knowledge and emotions. Social metacognition is the group sharing and monitoring each other's knowledge, emotions, and actions, which is what we genuinely want. Social metacognition distributes these responsibilities across group members. Now, instead of you just trying to remember everything before leaving the house, if you have a partner, you could say it's your job to bring the umbrella. They distribute the metacognitive, metamemory responsibilities between each other. Okay, you bring they're going on a picnic. Okay, you bring the basket, I'll get the potato salad, and you get the blanket, and then you know what I mean? A partner will say to somebody else, did you remember to call your mother tonight? And the person says, oh, that's right. So one person isn't responsible for all the metamemory. You can use system 2 metacognition between each other. And in this paper by Shea and all, 2014, he argues that this is the nature of system 2 metacognition, to express our system 1 feelings to each other so that we can then engage in cooperative, shared, coordinated behavior. So this is one of the reasons that loneliness is so acutely felt by people. You can have families and friends who don't engage in shared metacognition in an empathetic way, and people can be like, I don't know why I'm so lonely, I'm around people all the time. Well, it's because you're not sharing and empathizing with each other's thoughts and feelings, which is what our hardware wants. So a lot of mental illness in families, on the surface, can be like, well, we're not fighting, there's nothing particularly aggressive, there's no physical abuse, but psychological neglect is a really serious thing. And it's an invisible, harmful entity that people are talking about more and more. This idea of psychological neglect that most people grow up with because our parents and family don't show they care enough about our genuine feelings and thoughts. They don't seem to care about, what your values are, what your beliefs are, what your goals are, that you've changed, that you had some meaningful experience. And this is what causes a lot of acute emotional pain in people. And one of the reasons why this type of knowledge is getting more talked about, because we're realizing there's an invisible problem in our culture where people aren't sharing and engaging with their thoughts and feelings enough. And this is causing unhappy families, unhappy friendships, unhappy marriages. And by learning how to meta-represent and empathize with our thoughts and feelings of others, we can heal our families, have strong relationships, but it takes deliberate and intentional meta-representation. People have been talking about this with famous people. You got all the money, you got all these friends, you got all this luxury. Why are you not happy? And they go, I don't know. I don't know. And, terrible things can happen to them as a result. Stephen Fry said he had the same experience where he was famous and rich, lots of friends, but he was suicidally depressed. And he realized it's because he wasn't actually saying anything meaningful to his friends, and they weren't saying anything meaningful to that. They weren't showing that they cared about his inner being, his inner state. He became psychologically well the more that he engaged in meaningful empathy with others. And so this is important. Yeah, go ahead.
So then would you say that it's more about sharing your inner emotions, or just the aspect of social, being social?
So the question is it just being social and just talking about random stuff the same as sharing and empathizing? No, good point. So people just hanging out, just talking, chatting, just sort of saying random things that are funny. You can get some social nutrients that way, but that's not going to really satisfy you, as you've probably noticed. The deep, meaningful nature of what humans want is an actual psychological intimacy with each other. They want to deeply share their thoughts and feelings, and you don't need a lot of friends, you just need some good ones that actually express their thoughts and feelings back and forth in a vulnerable way. Yeah.
Business transaction.
Yeah.
It's not like a friendship, but you're would that be like?
So yeah, so if I understand your question, what if you're in therapy and the person's not your friend and the therapist is expressing your thoughts and feelings back to you and empathizing? Yeah, that would actually be, you'd notice, this is one of the reasons therapy works, is because you're getting this nutrient that you're starved for, which is somebody expressing your thoughts and feelings back to you as if they matter. Amazing. You know what I mean? When they do. My point was they engage with your thoughts and feelings as if they matter, because they do. And most people don't get that from the people that are supposed to care about them the most. And that hurts most people. And so family therapy is a lot about saying, now you repeat what your son said. Your mother said something to you. Repeat what she said as if you are empathizing with what they said. And so everybody can not agree with each other, but at least expressing each other's thoughts and feelings back to each other, saying, I hear what you're saying. I hear you. I'm not trying to deliberately misinterpret. Oh, you're just saying that because you're bad. You're just trying to hurt me. Like these sort of layered negative, we talked about automatic responses, meta-emotions. So when you strip away these meta-emotions, at the base is people wanting to feel heard and empathized with. So in terms of coordinating our behavior, basically the building of civilization required communicating and sharing our thoughts and intentions and coordinating and achieving goals together. So all this came from meta-representing intentions. Millions of people engaging in shared representations, moving in the same direction together, trying to draw material out of the earth, creating blueprints of a shared intention, and then going about building it. And this times a million times a billion, and this is how humans have grown as a civilization, where we represent our thoughts together, we move in the same direction towards shared intentions, and this is one of the driving factors of the progress of civilization. Again, really big international intergovernmental agencies, such as the United Nations, whose purpose is to develop friendly relations. Friendly, what does friendly mean? It means keeping your negative meta-emotions in check and engaging in dialogue to achieve international cooperation and harmonizing, which requires people sitting down and, we have unfriendly relations, but let's engage through dialogue, and I'll meta-represent my thoughts to you, you meta-represent your thoughts and feelings to me, and we'll see if we can achieve some shared goal together. Yeah.
I actually like one or the other, but we're the only ones that have both.
Thank you, that's great. So what animals have is system 1 metacognition, this sort of implicit engagement that can have a certain level of complexity. But to achieve civilizational complexity, you need system 2 meta-representation. You need these, as you saw, those blue chunks of meta-representation, these things, these concepts that can represent other concepts and fold in on each other. I can represent what Japan wants. I don't have to agree with them, but we can then get in a dialogue and have negotiations to some sort of shared partnership. You can have people who have been engaging in violent animosity for thousands of years sit down, share their thoughts and feelings, maybe have a moderator so that things don't get too heated, but then they can start to build. Now, usually what a moderator will do will say, okay, you don't agree, you have all this anger and hatred, let's put something in the middle. What do you both agree on? And they both agree on the desire to live in peace or what have you. You know, we like this, we like that. Okay, here's some shared things, and you build more shared things, and then you show how can we cooperate towards a shared goal. And this is how meta-representing skillfully can end thousands of years of conflict and create a more peaceful world, where the world used to be all war and conflict and misunderstanding, where differences in opinion created violent outcomes. And now, through the skillful meta-representing of our thoughts and engagement with each other's minds, we can break that heritage and move towards something better. Okay, so this is fun, about how theory of mind isn't all good. I don't know if you've ever seen The Princess Bride. This was a video that was shown to me as a fun example of how meta-representation can be used to exploit. Yeah, so this gets people pretty excited because this is a scene where there is a princess who was captured, and it was captured by a genius the Sicilian, the genius, you'll see he's bald, not the guy wearing the mask. And so this man in black is going to try to rescue her. And so the genius says, you know, I won't let her go, but they engage in a battle of wits to see who wins, to see whether the princess will be rescued. And so here's the dialogue. It's a bit of an old movie, but it's fun, and you'll see him.
It's called iocane powder.
Sorry, you'll see him meta-representing and trying to outwit the other person that way. Here we go.
What you do not smell is called.
To think, all that time it was Shortcut that was poisoned.
They were both poisoned. I spent the last few years building up an immunity to iocane powder.
All right, that's just a bit of fun. The battle of wits to try to anticipate the behavior of others. Social cognition is social metacognition to a large extent, in that it allows humans to interpret the thoughts and social information of others and to behave appropriately or maybe inappropriately to try to perhaps poison somebody else or save the princess. However, this is an ability, these abilities engage and support social competence. So the better you are at this, the better and more socially competent you are, and it's something you can learn. So some of the most significant socio-cognitive abilities include learning facial expressions, micro-expressions, joint attention, theory of mind, empathy, moral processing. And so the fundamental assumption of social cognition and its research is the idea that, again, cognitivism is the idea that internal mental representations of people and of social situations play a causal role. This is something we just sort of get at this point, but this is still very new, the idea that internal mental representations matter and that they play a major causal role in shaping human behavior. So the idea of social cognition was developed in the 1970s, and so now it's sort of the dominant perspective in social psychology across North America. It emerged from information processing, explanations, and perspectives. Very valuable stuff. And so research and theories in this field came from earlier work in psychology, such as perception and attribution and attitudes. And so then we moved to the sort of the core of this phenomenon, which is information, representations. These key concepts can include schemas, mental frameworks for social information, heuristics, kind of rule of thumb. If you don't know, don't be rude, for example. If you don't know a situation, don't say anything. Heuristics, rule of thumb processes. Automatic and control processes, so this involves system 1, system 2, automatic, control now, system 2, you understand this stuff. 2 basic models of social thought. There are potential sources of errors in social cognition. We talked about errors you can make. And then there's affect, feelings, emotions, and how feelings shape our thoughts, and how our thoughts shape our feelings. Okay, so we did talk about theory of mind and what that means. Meta representing, having a theory of other minds is a theory of mind. And so this dual system account, the system 1, system 2, distinguishes implicit, so system 1, implicit processes, automatically sort of helping us understand and engage socially. Children do that to various levels of success. Then you have explicit processes, this higher system 2, which knowledge comes into your working memory, and then you act out more complex, more long-term beneficial social actions. Okay. We talked about this. I just wanted to make sure I went over it. Mind reading, these are all the same sort of ideas, but it's used sort of in different ways in the literature, but it all sort of gets to the same sort of concept. We're trying to predict, explain, and interact with the thoughts and behaviors of others. And so there is a debate as to how do we gain this social simulation of other people, this theory of mind. Do we just kind of simulate it on our own, or do we infer from people's facial expressions, or a bit of both? And I tend to think it's a bit of both. Okay, now neurodiversity is important because it helps us understand how this is not as universal as we would like to think. Experiment shows that there is an inability to attribute mental states, such as desires and beliefs, to people who have autism or ADHD or just different types of neural states. Unfortunately, this can lead to social difficulty. People such as somebody who is on the spectrum, can have difficulty reading subtle facial expressions and body language, things that other people just implicitly understand. It can be hard. I mean, I have some autistic or people who are on the spectrum friends who I have to realize I have to be very literal with because they don't understand when I'm making a joke as easily. They tend to believe things literally. Sarcasm and embedding deeper implied meaning in literal words can be tricky. And this can be a little sad because it can make people vulnerable to being misunderstood or misled or bullied. People can think that there's something wrong with them, and really this neurodiversity just means exactly that, diversity. People have different kinds of mental experiences, and they can all be equally valid. They can have skills in some areas and be less skillful in other areas, just like us all. So Barrett-Cohen developed a term called mind blindness, where it's possible for people to not easily interpret the feelings and thoughts of others. Some people just intuitively have a rich understanding of the landscape of social experience, and other people have mind blindness. But you can learn through mind reading, through System 2 metacognition, that the thoughts and feelings of others. You can learn that when somebody's eyebrows are raised in the middle and they have watery eyes, they're probably sad. You can learn that if somebody's eyes are open, when you say something, they're probably surprised. If there's long face, sad. Micro-expressions are hard. Neurodiversity and theory of mind can create this phenomena of masking, where people put on a mask of social customs. So masking or camouflaging is sort of a survival technique for people who don't innately understand how to socially perform. It's this artificial performance to engage in a way that's more socially acceptable. This is to avoid stigma, avoid being ostracized, to be more successful at work, to have a sense of belonging, to not get that pang of loneliness. Examples of masking can include copying another person's tone or voice or body language. I mean, people have all done this in some way. If you're in a professional setting, you'll sort of change your tone. If you change your body language. And if you try to give the expected answer. If you are in a social setting that's more formal. But this is what people who are neurodiverse can do all the time. They engage in small talk, force eye contact, imitate facial expressions and gestures, hide their own personal interests, imitate responses, try to rehearse them as if scripted. And this is a way to engage in social interaction in a way that is more socially acceptable. This can also cause more mental illness since, of course, people aren't empathizing with their genuine feelings and thoughts. Yeah.
We have to do this every day.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just a job, like this is constant. You know?
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, literally.
It's a survival lifestyle. Yeah, absolutely. And so they are engaging in System 2 metacognition all the time, every day. But then, I remember last class where I talked about how they can become skillful, it can become automatic. You begin with just declarative rules, and then eventually it builds up procedural knowledge that runs automatically. This is how masking can then create automatic social skillfulness. But yeah, thank you, that's a good point. So what makes humans' cognition unique? Tomasello says it's the idea of shared intentionality. Remember we talked about intentionality in concepts. A concept, a symbol, refers to something else. It's a symbol for something else. If we all share a symbol that refers to something else, we can all move in that direction together. Shared intentionality. Concepts can be about something. And if we all share that aboutness, we can all move in the same direction together, which is why, again, the principle of cultural liberalism in terms of, you can be as free as you want as long as you don't hurt other people. There are tolerance and values. This idea of this aboutness we can all share, this collective intentionality, and then we can all move in that direction together as a civilization. We don't have to all be the same. We don't have to all believe the same thing, except that you shouldn't be biased or prejudiced against other principles and beliefs. This idea of cultural liberalism is a shared intentionality that we have, and enables us to build a collective civilization. Yep.
Would you say this like shared intentionality is like some cultures is like will be completely different? Or
Completely different, yeah.
There's like a shared intentionality that's like global.
Well, there's a shared intentionality that can be global, but not everyone agrees with it. There's not a single belief that everybody agrees with. So some cultures' differences are violently repressed. The shared intentionality of certain governments is that certain actions that don't hurt anybody, you can be put in jail for them. That wearing or thinking or saying certain things can be violently repressed. You can be killed, tortured for them. So that's the shared intentionality of some cultures, not so much our culture. Different ethics can be shared among different cultures. Now, in terms of the United Nations, we would, believe that violence and cultural repression is not necessarily pro-social, doesn't lead to happier people, to more prosperous societies. And so there's an ethical sort of progress of history that people are getting more and more on board with. This idea of letting people be themselves as long as they don't interfere with the same right of others. This is one of the developments of this uniquely human ability, this ability to live in a civilization where people can believe different things, but this greater collective shared intentionality enables a peaceful coexistence. But if we were to leave it to children, it wouldn't be so harmonious. So one of the first steps of children learning this ability to understand the intentionality and engage in shared intentionality is to develop the ability to meta-represent using shared symbols, linguistic, pretend play, to participate in cultural rituals, to engage in things that aren't real but we pretend they are, such as money or certain cultural celebrations that don't make sense but they're fun, like Halloween, St. Patrick's Day. These don't make any sense, but they're fun. We engage with them because they're make-believe, but they're a cause for fun activities. So representing social causality, this is something we all do. Think of it like a chessboard. We know that if I move this way, it'll cause certain responses, and if I move that way, it'll cause different responses. So this is kind of what we all think. So one person is thinking, okay, I'm going to try to appear friendly. Don't scowl. And the other girl is saying, okay, don't appear too eager. You like this guy. Don't show too much eagerness. They might get the wrong idea. And then this other person is saying, try to remember her name because she'll be offended if I don't remember her name. We're meta-representing how somebody will act if I do a certain thing. So if I do this, then they will act that way. Appear friendly, they'll like me more. Don't seem too eager, they'll respect you more. Remember her name, she'll seem to like you more. Don't look at my phone, that'll offend them. That'll cause negative emotional reactions in that person. So we all understand that the wrong speech or behavior can cause negative emotions in others and can push people away. Look at the chessboard. We know that there's certain behaviors we do that will push people away. It will cause negative emotional reactions in them. So this is the idea of social causality, understanding causality. And so some people have difficulty doubting the perfect validity of their thoughts and feelings. Maybe some people with borderline personality disorder or different neurodivergence. They totally think that if I'm scornful or furious at somebody, they totally deserve it. And I'm right to be furious at that person's opinion. And therapists can't tell them otherwise. So if you can't convince people to engage in pro-social behavior, you can put it a different way. You can say that, nobody wants to be alone. Nobody wants to be socially ostracized. Even people who are neurodivergent feel the pain of isolation. And so you can say, all right, let's put it in your self-interest, in this sort of Machiavellian framing. Okay, maybe that person does deserve your terrible scorn and fury, but let's look at the social causality. Showing anger causes negative emotions in others. We know that. We know that. If you show inappropriate anger towards someone, they will become angry at you or distrust you. Partners and friends will likely leave you. leading to loneliness. Here's like a chessboard, causality. Showing inappropriate anger causes negative emotions in others, causing them to move away from you. If loneliness is something you want to avoid, then don't display extreme negative emotions towards others. Even negative facial expressions can push people away. Social causality. So if you can't make people engage in genuine pro-social behavior as a result of good-naturedness, you can at least put it in their self-interest. And in fact, all of us can actually learn a little bit of that pro-social behavior is in our long-term best interest. Not showing irritation, not showing impatience when somebody tells a long story. And if you do interrupt somebody's long story, you have to do it in a nice way. You put on a smile and say, oh gosh, I'd really like to hear the rest of this. Unfortunately, I have to be somewhere. I'm really sorry, maybe we can talk another time. You know, you showing respect for somebody keeps negative emotions from occurring in them. So system 1, in terms of social cognition, this is sort of the children's poor theory of mind, which can lead to their negative emotions and causing negative behavior and causing negative emotions in others, such as name calling, hitting, general rudeness. These are kind of just general things kids do. Most children have a desire to interrupt, to blurt their thoughts and feelings as soon as as we heard before, they just want to tell you stuff. They don't care if you're in the middle of something. They want to tell you something that they find emotionally meaningful. That's why most people interrupt. Children are initially unaware that this causes resentment in others. You have to tell them. You have to give them a system 2 meta-representation that interrupting causes negative emotions in others. And so this connects to system 1. You can sort of train up people's automaticity in a different way. So most cultures discourage interruption. Most people find it bad manners. Bad manners usually have to do with keeping negative emotions from occurring in people. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be something totally arbitrary, but that culture considers it bad manners. And so good manners means not creating negative emotions in others, showing respect for everybody in the room. I empathize, I respect your internal states. I don't want to cause negative emotions and suffering in you. So you can learn rules for avoiding causing the negative feelings in others, and this is considered social etiquette, knowledge in system 2. So you see the little picture in the corner up there, your automaticity just wants to blurt and go about whatever feeling you have. But your system 2 can restrain that. It can deliberately intervene and restrain system 1 automaticity and keep that harmfulness from occurring. This connects to what we talked about in terms of mental filtering. We've all filtered. We all have friends who can't filter very well. And you tell them, yeah, you need to filter a little more. That wasn't so great. That caused negative emotions in others. What you're doing is you're giving them maybe formal rules. If you feel something, check. Does that offend people? Was it inappropriate? Was it obscene? So we can learn rules for communication that support and strengthen relationships, because we know that just expressing our feelings and thoughts in a relationship can damage that relationship. Yes, we want to express our feelings and thoughts as soon as we want, but no, that'll cause harm to the relationship. It can push that person away. So we can learn rules for communication that support and strengthen relationships. So for example, usually there's 2 strategies for engaging. Usually people will either blurt or freeze their partner. Engage in a freezing, they won't talk at all, or they'll engage in unrestrained anger. This is a false dichotomy. You can learn beneficial strategies that include perspective shifting, validating others, saying, I want to express my thoughts to you, and I want you to respect, and I want you to hear me. And you can preface what you're about to say with an appeal for empathy. And they'll make the person's automatic emotions checked for a moment so that you can then engage in empathetic meta-representation with them. And then, or you can say things like that empathize with them. I understand why you would feel that way. Oh, does that feel good when somebody says that? I understand why you would feel that way. They don't have to agree, but at least you're saying, you're not crazy for feeling or thinking that. We don't necessarily agree, but I'm empathizing, I hear you, I understand. There are higher level strategies for engaging in relationships that lead to more beneficial outcomes. So many relationships, marriages, and friendships could be saved. Families wouldn't have to go through such hardships if people moved away from this false dichotomy of unrestrained anger or freezing and moved into validating, empathizing, not always agreeing, that's fine, but at least engaging with others in a non-aggressive way. Okay, so I'm going to go right up to the end today, so I'm going to ask for your patience, but this is going to be interesting, hopefully. We can learn bad social training, bad social cognition. Bad sitcoms can give you a misunderstanding of how people actually talk. So human social cognition, our neural network, can get trained up by bad examples that people then imitate. So many people were raised listening to how people speak in sitcoms, which of course is not the way people naturally speak. But to be entertaining, the dialogue in sitcoms is normally rude, mean-spirited, or sniping. This is called sitcom abusive. We don't really notice this. But it's very antisocial communication, where people don't actually have the natural reactions that you would see, because you can't have them all fight and leave the room, because now you have no plot. People were rude and sniping, and then they just kind of pretend like it's fine. When in real life, that would not happen. And so this is usually accompanied by a laugh track. So people are rude, mean-spirited, sniping, there's a laugh track, and there's no social consequence. And so this gives children an incorrect signal of social approval. Oh, they laughed. They laughed. That's a great thing. Being rude is a good thing. Being sniping or saying something mean to somebody is a good thing. There was a whole room of people laughing and approving of that. In reality, this would actually cause social resentment and even ostracism. And so this pairing of antisocial communication with approval gives children a false impression that harmful communication is in fact good behavior. And it trains up their neural network, where they view thousands of hours of this type of social bantering and interaction, and they start to imitate it. They imitate these harmful speech patterns. And so poor communication skills and a lifetime of failed relationships and social isolation can result partially from bad training. To give you an example, I think The Big Bang's funny too, but this is just an example of how much TV dialogue is just really unacceptable. For example, here's a scene from The Big Bang with the laugh track removed. Okay, there's no laugh track, somebody took it out, you can still kind of hear it. But you tell me, if you were in this social situation, would there be social consequences? Or would everyone just think it's totally fine to be this utterly rude to each other?
Penny dear, why don't you shoot another silver bullet my way?
Get one yourself.
Ooh, somebody's been taking bitchy pills.
God, he's an ass when he drinks.
Well, he's an ass when he doesn't. You just don't hear it.
I think we need to start entertaining the possibility that the shaming could go on for years.
Well, if that's the case, Penny will have to get satellite TV and maybe once a week want to vacuum through this place.
Basically, this person's saying, go get me another beer, and the other person's saying, get it yourself, and this person pretty much, calls her the B word, and then they just kind of ignore it, and then they're insulting each other in hearing range. And then this person sits down after saying, this place is an utter mess, and this person's really, a slob. And everyone just says, that's totally fine. And then the whole episode is like that. People saying rude, snipey things, and nobody reacting. Laugh track, laughing away, and everyone saying, oh, that's great. That was great. These friends being rude and mean to each other. What a wonderful, I wish I was in that scene. And so this type of entertainment causes people's neural nets to be trained up in a way where we subtly start to implicitly engage in this type of reward learning, where we sort of imagine, hey, there must be some sort of laugh track somewhere approving of when I'm rude or mean or sniping. But you got the idea. If you remember sitcoms from your youth, you'll probably remember dialogue where there's a laugh track, and it's usually as a result of people being mean to each other with no social consequence. It's not real life. But this is just an idea of how you can gain bad social training, you can gain good social training, you can think of social engagement like a chessboard in terms of gaining social resources by being nice, by understanding what will happen if you're not nice, and then you can also engage in genuine, good-natured social engagement through meta-representing the rules and the norms of social engagement. So let's see. So I'm going to open it up to question for just a couple minutes, and then I'll let you go. Any questions, thoughts, meta-representations? Mm-hmm. Ruth?
Really different, but is that why people have functions in their heads to I'll say this, then they'll laugh, then they'll make this comment
Yeah.
just to,
Oh yeah.
have more social competence?
Sure, exactly. And also people can become very neurotic about what they're going to say. And so this kind of, you're trying to say something funny, and the desire to just say something funny usually comes from bad social training, thinking that funniness is how you engage in a valuable way, when really that's the least of it. Okay, thanks for listening, and have a great weekend, and I'll be here for any questions. And the rest of the slides I'll get to on Wednesday.